Fall leaflet, okay? This is the Fine Gael leaflet. Now, I have attended several meetings around the country as part of I go around a lot, and I have attended yes meetings, no meetings, and yes and no meetings. But the problem with the yes and no meetings, nobody of the yes side turns up to those, right? Because they don't want to hear the facts. Now, if you can bear with me, facts that the panel did not tell you about here tonight. In order to get down to our 3% deficit, in order to get into this further program down the road, I believe we're facing 8 billion of cuts and taxes, which is going to be taken out of all their pockets, all their pensioners, workers, the whole lot. On top of that, he's talking about this magic fund that's out there to bail out countries. He failed to tell you that out of that magic fund is 700 billion, and us, the taxpayers, and everybody else, Ireland has to contribute 11 billion. Where is that going to come from? And for the next 20 years after that, we have to contribute in the region of 5 billion a year in order to get our deficit down. He failed to tell you that out of that magic fund is 700 billion, and us, the taxpayers, and everybody else, Ireland has to contribute 11 billion. Where is that going to come from? And for the next 20 years after that, we have to contribute in the region of 5 billion a year in order to get our deficit down, our taxes down. My question is, where is that money going to come from? Obviously, we don't want to hear that. I asked the question. Now, Mr. Courtney mentioned there Mr. Courtney mentioned that there is money flowing into the banks. Granted, there is. The reason there is probably money flowing into the banks is the reason this country is on its knees. People are afraid to spend, even those that may have it, they're afraid to spend because they know the treachery that's coming down the road. And I just take over, and one more comment now from the Minister, the person from Kerry Co-op. He mentioned there is no downside to this fiscal treaty. Yes, there is no downside if you're a Dennis O'Brien or a multi-millionaire in this country. But if you're an old age pensioner, I met an old age pensioner last week at a meeting who is wheelchair bound, and she suffered 120 euros of a cut in her fuel allowance. Now this is a simple woman who doesn't need much, but she said that was the last straw.
Thank you for your question. I don't know what it was, but I think thank you.
Where is all this money coming from that we're expecting to bail out?
Can I answer the question?
Hold on a minute, I think Minister Coney should answer.
Yeah, well, maybe if I could answer those questions, I might be able to answer your questions as well, if there's anything you want to clarify. First of all, can I say that everybody's welcome here, right? Yeah, this isn't, I know, but I'm not looking to pick a fight, I'm just trying to answer your questions.
But I'll tell you one thing. One of 3 of your county councillors
If you let
me and then without I mentioning a word even. For a word of speaking of a meeting was started, they abused me.
If you could let me answer the question. First of all, I just wanted to start answering the question by saying everybody is welcome here, regardless of political background or views on this treaty. The whole point of this evening is to try and answer the kind of questions that you've just raised. Okay? Because unfortunately, some people have a misunderstanding of the facts, and I want to try and clarify that for people. In relation to the 3% deficit that Ireland is required to get down to, because by the end of this year we're required to have a deficit of 8.6% of GDP. By the time we get to the end of 2015, we have to have that deficit down to 3% of GDP. That is part of the agreement with the Troika for the funding that we currently have, and it is entirely separate to this treaty. So even if we say no next Thursday, we still have to, in order to draw down the funds that run the country at the moment, we still have to get our deficit down to 3% of GDP by 2015. Okay, so people who think they can vote no next week and all of a sudden austerity will disappear, are not living in the real world. We have, unfortunately, got a massive gap between what we spend versus what we earn, and we are borrowing the difference from the Troika, who are giving it to us at cost, but in return for us closing that gap. That is the position we are currently in, regardless of this treaty. Okay? And that is the figure of the 8 billion euros that you're talking about. That whether whoever is in government, if they are going to continue to draw down funding next year from the Troika, will have to meet, whether you like it or whether you don't. This is the price of the mistakes that have been made in the past. And I don't want to get into whose fault it was or anything like that. I think that has been understood by most people in this room. The second thing I want to say is that this treaty has no impact on the commitments that countries have made that are currently in bailout programs. It says that explicitly in the treaty. And so we will work through our current program, and then we have a 3-year transition period in order to then start looking at meeting the requirements of this treaty. And if you look, for example, at what those requirements are, you begin to see that they're very achievable. In relation to debt levels, for example, we have to, at some stage in the future, get our debt to GDP ratio down to what's called 60% of GDP. Our GDP at the moment is about 160 billion euros. 60% of that is a manageable debt. Unfortunately, our debt, because of the crisis we're in at the moment, will peak at about 112 to 115% of GDP. And so over a 20-year period, which is the time frame outlined in this treaty, starting in 2018, we will need to get our debt to GDP relationship down from about 112 to 115% of GDP down to 60% of GDP. And that will be done through growth, not through more cutbacks. For God's sake, if we can't get